The bass from downstairs rattles through my bones as I press my swollen belly against the bathroom sink. Another Friday night, another one of Brandon's networking parties, turning our home into his personal nightclub. Through the mirror, I catch my reflection, 7 months pregnant and relegated to hiding in my own bathroom while strangers occupy every inch of our house. Adeline? Brandon's voice carries over the music as he raps on the door. Hey, babe, we need the guest bathroom. Can you wrap it up? I grip the counter's edge. This is our master bathroom, Brandon. The one attached to our bedroom? Yeah, about that. He clears his throat. Lucas and Danielle had a bit too much to drink. I told them they could crash in our room tonight. The baby kicks, as if sharing my indignation. Where exactly am I supposed to sleep? The kitchen's pretty quiet. Maybe grab the air mattress from the garage? His voice holds that familiar note of dismissal, the one that says he's already walking away. Already done with this conversation. I unlock the door and find him halfway down the hallway, designer shirt perfectly pressed, not a hair out of place. I'm 7 months pregnant with your child. He turns, flashing that smile that once made my heart skip. Now it just makes my stomach turn. Come on, Addie. These people are important for my career. One night won't kill you. Like the one night last week? Or the one before that? My voice cracks. When did our home become your personal venue? Don't start this again. He checks his phone, thumb scrolling rapidly. Oh, perfect timing. Just posted about my pregnant wife resting peacefully upstairs while I host a small gathering for colleagues. The sympathy likes are rolling in. Something snaps inside me. You're using my pregnancy for social media clout? It's called personal branding, babe. Everyone loves a family man. He winks and heads downstairs, leaving me standing in the hallway as strangers laugh and drink in my living room. I press my hand against the wall to steady myself, feeling the vibrations of the music pulse through the house. The perfect husband, the perfect host, the perfect social media presence, that's Brandon's reality. My reality is being pushed aside, reduced to a prop in his carefully curated life. The baby kicks again, harder this time. In that moment, watching Brandon disappear into his crowd of admirers, I make a decision. This isn't just about me anymore. This facade he's built, this house of cards he's stacked so carefully, it's time to watch it fall. I pull out my phone and scroll to Margaret's number, my mother-in-law. She's always said family comes first. Let's see how she feels about her son's version of family values. The morning after the party, I find Brandon in his home office, scrolling through social media while nursing a hangover. Empty coffee cups litter his desk, and the lingering scent of stale beer hangs in the air. I spent the night on that air mattress in the kitchen, listening to giggling and footsteps above me until dawn. Your mother called, I say, watching his shoulders tense. She wants to know why we haven't been to Sunday dinner in 2 months. Did you tell her anything? His eyes don't leave the screen. Just that we've been busy with your networking events. I lean against the doorframe. Though I did mention how thoughtful you were, letting your drunk friends use our bedroom while your pregnant wife slept on the kitchen floor. That gets his attention. He spins in his chair, jaw tight. You had no right. No right? Like you had no right to post those ultrasound photos without asking me? Or share details about my morning sickness with your 50,000 followers? He stands, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. Those posts got me a sponsorship deal with a baby product company. Do you know how valuable that is for my brand? Your brand. The words taste bitter. What about our child, Brandon? What about creating a real home instead of a content factory? This is how we maintain our lifestyle, Adeline. He gestures around the office. The house, the cars, the organic food you love so much, it all comes from my ability to stay relevant. A notification pings on his phone. His face lights up as he reads it. Perfect. Danielle just tagged me in her story about last night. Best host ever, always taking care of his friends while managing his growing family. See? This is gold. I notice something then, a slight flush when he mentions Danielle's name, the way his thumb lingers over her profile picture. How often does Danielle stay over after these parties? Don't start with that paranoid nonsense. He walks past me, deliberately brushing my shoulder. I have a lunch meeting. We'll talk about your conversation with my mother later. As he heads downstairs, I slip into his chair and wake his computer screen. His email is open, and there it is, a message from our mortgage company marked urgent, second notice. Below that, dozens of correspondence with Danielle, dating back months. Their subject lines mock me: late night planning session? After party details, just between us. My hands shake as I forward everything to my personal email. The baby kicks, harder than ever, as if urging me on. Brandon's perfect world is built on lies, and I'm holding the first loose thread. One pull, and it all comes apart. I hear his car start in the driveway. Time to make that call to Margaret again. This time, I'll tell her everything. Margaret's face on the video call turns ashen as I forward her the mortgage notices. Her hands shake while reading, each scroll revealing another layer of Brandon's deception. Behind her, I glimpse Charles pacing, his retirement watch glinting as he gestures in frustration. He's taken out 3 separate loans against the house, Margaret says, her voice tight. The payments. Adeline, these amounts are astronomical. I shift uncomfortably on our leather sofa, the one Brandon insisted we needed for his lifestyle content photos. There's more. As I share the emails between Brandon and Danielle, Charles stops pacing. That son of a... Charles, Margaret warns, but her own anger bleeds through. Adeline, why didn't you come to us sooner? A key turns in the front door. Brandon strides in, phone to his ear, laughing at something Danielle's probably said. He freezes when he sees me with the laptop. I'll call you back, he says, ending the call. His eyes narrow at the screen. What's going on? Hello, Brandon. Margaret's voice cuts through the speakers, sharp as steel. The color drains from his face. Mother? What? The refinancing papers just arrived at our house, Charles interrupts. Interesting, since we're listed as guarantors. Care to explain why our signatures are on documents we've never seen? Brandon's mask slips for just a moment before that practiced smile returns. Dad, it's a simple misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Like you can explain the $40,000 credit card debt? I stand, one hand protectively over my belly. Or the sponsored posts you're planning with Danielle about being a devoted family man? He steps toward me, voice dropping to a whisper. You had no right to go through my private. Private? I laugh, the sound harsh even to my ears. Like those private photos of my ultrasound appointments you shared with your followers? The intimate details of my pregnancy you sold to the highest bidder? Everything I did was for us. He runs his hands through his hair, messing up the careful styling. The sponsors, the networking, it's all about building our future. Your future, Brandon, Margaret cuts in. While you're building your brand, you're destroying your family. You don't understand modern business, Mother. Sometimes you have to. Forge documents? Charles's voice thunders through the speakers. Mortgage your pregnant wife's security for Instagram likes? Brandon's phone buzzes. He glances at it instinctively, always the slave to notifications. I catch Danielle's name on the screen before he can hide it. We're coming over, Margaret announces. All of us. Including Felicity. It's time for a proper family meeting about your choices, Brandon. The look he gives me promises retribution, but I'm beyond caring. Let him rage. Let him scheme. His carefully curated world is crumbling, and I'm finally ready to watch it fall. The silence in our house feels like a living thing, coiled and waiting. Brandon's been gone for hours since his family's call, probably crafting some elaborate explanation for his deceptions. I'm packing a bag when Lucas appears in the doorway, shifting nervously. Brandon sent me to get his laptop, he says, not quite meeting my eyes. Of course he did. I zip the bag closed. Damage control? Lucas steps inside, lowering his voice. He's at Danielle's place, planning some kind of counter-narrative. Something about you being unstable, pregnancy hormones making you paranoid. My hand's still on the zipper. And you're helping him? Actually. He pulls out his phone, showing me a series of messages. I've been documenting everything. The loans, the parties, the way he talks about you when you're not around. I thought maybe someday you'd use it against him? I was jealous, Lucas admits. His perfect life, his devoted wife. But watching him destroy it all, watching him hurt you. He hands me his phone. Take it. There's proof of everything, including deals he made using his parents' forged signatures. A notification pops up, Brandon's latest social media post. My heart stops as I read it, heartbroken to announce that my wife's mental health has taken a concerning turn. Please respect our privacy as we navigate this difficult time. #Pray for Adeline, #pregnancy mental health. The comments flood in, sympathy, support. People praising his bravery for speaking out. My hands shake as I scroll through thousands of strangers discussing my supposed breakdown. There's more, Lucas says quietly. The house. He's already listed it for sale. The paperwork went through yesterday. The room spins. Our home, the nursery I'd just finished painting, all of it sold without my knowledge or consent. My phone rings, Felicity. Don't react, she says before I can speak. Brandon's on his way home with Danielle. They're filming some sort of intervention video, making it look like they're trying to help you. He's got Trevor playing mediator, all set up to make you look unhinged if you fight back. The baby kicks hard, as if sensing my rising panic. But underneath it, something else builds, a cold, clear fury. Lucas, I say, how would Brandon's followers react to proof that their perfect family man is a fraud? They'd crucify him. Lucas's eyes widen. But he'd still have his family's money to fall back on. I think of those forged documents, the evidence in my hands. Not if his parents pressed charges. The front door opens downstairs. I hear Brandon's voice, practice concern for the camera, I just hope we can get through to her. I grip Lucas's phone tighter. Time to show everyone exactly who's having a breakdown. Margaret's living room feels like a war room, documents spread across her antique coffee table. Charles paces by the window, phone pressed to his ear as he speaks with their lawyer. Felicity sits cross-legged on the floor, methodically sorting through Lucas's evidence. He's scheduled another party for tonight, Felicity says, scrolling through Brandon's messages. The guest list includes 3 social media influencers who specialize in mental health advocacy. My throat tightens. He's building his narrative. Look at this. Margaret holds up a bank statement. The mortgage payments stopped 2 months ago, but there are weekly transfers to an account under Danielle's name. The baby kicks, and I press my hand against my side, trying to stay focused. How much? Enough to buy a small condo. Charles ends his call, his face grim. Which is exactly what they did. The deed was filed yesterday, both their names on it. The room tilts slightly. I grab the armrest of Margaret's Victorian chair, steadying myself. That's not all. Felicity turns her laptop toward me. They're launching a podcast together. Modern Family Crisis, supporting loved ones through mental health struggles. First episode drops tomorrow. A notification lights up everyone's phones simultaneously, Brandon's latest post. A photo of him looking concerned in our nursery, surrounded by the clouds and stars I'd painted myself. The caption reads, "Sometimes the ones we love need more help than they can admit. Standing strong for my family through these dark times." Hashtag mental health awareness. Hashtag pregnancy crisis. "I'll kill him." Felicity starts to rise, but Margaret catches her arm. "We do this smart," Margaret says, her voice steel-wrapped silk. "Adeline, are you certain you want to go through with this? Once we start, there's no going back." I think of the nursery, my safe haven turned into his latest photo prop. Of the house he sold without my knowledge. Of nights spent on air mattresses while Danielle slept in my bed. "The lawyer says we have enough for criminal charges," Charles adds. "But it would mean public exposure. Everything would come out." My phone buzzes, a text from Trevor. "Brandon's telling everyone you're having a breakdown. Danielle's already writing a blog post about supporting her chosen family through your crisis. They're making you look unstable." I stand, one hand protectively over my belly. "Then let's show them what unstable really looks like." Felicity grins, sharp and dangerous. "I'll call Lucas. He can live stream the whole thing." "Remember," Margaret warns, "Brandon's desperate. Desperate people are dangerous." So am I. I pick up the stack of evidence. And unlike Brandon, I don't care anymore about keeping up appearances. The baby kicks again, stronger this time. Like a countdown to war. The party's in full swing when we arrive. Through the front window, I see Brandon holding court in our living room, Danielle at his side. Both of them performing concern for their live stream audience. 3 influential mental health advocates nod sympathetically as Brandon wipes away practiced tears. "Ready?" Felicity asks, phone already recording. Charles grips the folder of evidence. Margaret straightens her spine, every inch the family matriarch about to pass judgment. Lucas hovers nearby, his own stream connecting to thousands of Brandon's followers. I step through the door first. The music cuts off abruptly. Brandon's face flashes panic before settling into rehearsed worry. "Adeline, sweetheart," he starts, reaching for me with the camera rolling. "We're all here to help. Like you helped yourself to my nursery for your photo op?" My voice carries across the suddenly silent room. "Or like you helped yourself to your parents' signatures?" The mental health advocates exchange glances. One of them pulls out her phone, already sensing a different story unfolding. She's clearly distressed. Danielle steps forward, playing her part. "Brandon warned us about." "About what?" Margaret's voice cuts through the room like ice. "About forging our signatures? About the second mortgage? Or about the condo you two bought together?" Brandon's mask slips. "Mother, you don't understand." "Show them," I tell Lucas. He nods, projecting the evidence onto our living room wall: bank statements, forged documents. Private messages between Brandon and Danielle planning their podcast about my supposed breakdown. The advocates' phones are all out now, recording everything. Brandon lunges for the power cord, but Charles blocks his path. "Don't," Charles warns. "It's already streaming live." Brandon spins toward me, desperation replacing his careful composure. "You're ruining everything." "No," I say, watching his carefully constructed world crumble. "You did that yourself." Then Danielle makes her move, one I didn't expect. She grabs my arm, spinning me toward the crowd. Look at her. She's clearly unstable, attacking her loving husband who's only trying to help. The sudden movement, the twist, something tears inside me. Sharp pain rips through my abdomen. I gasp, doubling over. "Adeline?" Felicity drops her phone, rushing to my side. Warm liquid trickles down my legs. Too soon. It's too soon. "Call an ambulance," Margaret commands, but her voice seems far away. Brandon stands frozen, cameras still rolling, as I sink to my knees. In this moment of crisis, he's still performing, still calculating how to spin this. The last thing I see before the world goes dark is Lucas's phone, still streaming everything to Brandon's followers. At least they'll all see exactly who he is now. If I survive to witness the fallout. The hospital fluorescent lights flicker as I wake to beeping monitors. Margaret grips my hand, her face drawn with worry. Through the window, I see Charles arguing with hospital security while Felicity films everything on her phone. The baby? My voice cracks. Stable, Margaret soothes. But they need to keep you both monitored. The stress triggered early labor contractions. The door bursts open. Brandon strides in, still camera ready, Danielle hovering behind him. My wife needs rest, he announces loudly, clearly performing for someone. Everyone out. Your wife, Lucas steps from the corner, phone raised, needs the truth. Tell them what you just tried to do, Brandon. Brandon's face tightens. I was protecting my family's interests. By trying to have her declared mentally incompetent? Lucas's voice shakes. I heard you at the nurse's station. Trying to get medical power of attorney while she was unconscious. The monitors beep faster. Margaret stands, positioning herself between Brandon and my bed. You don't understand, Brandon starts, but Lucas cuts him off. I understood perfectly when you asked me to backdate documents showing a history of instability. Just like I understood when you convinced me to help hide your financial schemes. Lucas turns to me. I'm sorry, Adeline. I should have spoken up sooner. You're ruining everything, Danielle hisses, stepping forward. We had a plan. A plan? Charles appears in the doorway, security guards behind him. Like the plan to sell my daughter-in-law's house out from under her? Or the plan to steal my grandchild's future? Brandon's mask finally cracks. Everything I did was to build something better. The connections, the influence, it would have given our child opportunities. Our child? I push myself up, ignoring the pain. You mean your prop? Your social media storyline? Your ticket to more followers? You never understood what it takes to succeed, he snarls, mask completely gone now. Living in that perfect little fantasy world where love conquers all. Wake up, Adeline. Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't build empires. No, Margaret's voice cuts like steel. But it does build families. Something you clearly never learned. Security moves in, but Brandon's not finished. He grabs my medical chart, waving it like a weapon. One signature. That's all it would take to prove you're unfit. To give me control. Lucas's live stream catches everything, Brandon's rage, Danielle's scheming, the truth behind their carefully crafted lies. Thousands watch as Brandon's empire crumbles in real time. The baby kicks, strong and steady, as Brandon is escorted out. His last words echo down the hall, you'll regret this. All of you. But looking at my true family gathered around me, Margaret's strength, Charles's integrity, Felicity's fierce protection. Even Lucas's redemption, I know I won't regret a thing. Sometimes burning bridges lights the way forward. The divorce papers sit unsigned on Margaret's kitchen table while Felicity scrolls through her phone, reading the latest headlines. Brandon's empire hasn't just crumbled, it's been excavated, every lie exposed to sunlight. His sponsors are jumping ship, Felicity announces. The mental health advocates are particularly vocal about his attempted manipulation. I adjust my sleeping daughter in my arms, watching her tiny fingers curl around my thumb. She came early but fighting, just like her mother. There's something you should know, Margaret says, setting down her tea. About Brandon's Uncle James. Charles stiffens. Margaret. She needs to hear this. Margaret pulls out an old photo album. James was like Brandon, charismatic, ambitious, obsessed with appearances. He nearly bankrupted the family with his schemes, always chasing the next big thing. Eventually, he disappeared, leaving behind a trail of debt and broken relationships. Brandon's father, I realize. That's why Charles was so quick to spot the signs. History repeats, Charles says quietly. I thought I'd protected Brandon from becoming James, but maybe I just taught him to hide it better. A notification pings, Brandon's final social media post before his accounts go dark. Sometimes those closest to us become our greatest betrayers. The truth will emerge. #watch this space. Still threatening, still performing, Felicity scoffs. Even now. No, I say, understanding finally clicking. He's terrified. Without an audience, without followers, he doesn't know who he is anymore. The baby stirs, and I think about cycles, how they continue until someone chooses to break them. Brandon became his uncle, chasing validation through carefully curated lies. But this little girl won't inherit that legacy. Lucas appears in the doorway, holding a stack of documents. The forensic accountants found everything. Brandon's facing charges for the forgery and fraud. Danielle too. He hesitates. I'll be testifying against them both. Good, Margaret says firmly. Some bridges need to burn completely before we can build something better. I sign the divorce papers, my daughter still cradled in one arm. Each signature feels less like revenge and more like protection, not just for her, but for the truth itself. He'll try again, Charles warns. Men like Brandon, like James, they always find new audiences. Let him try. I close the photo album, hiding James's haunted eyes. But not with us. Not with her. Outside, spring sunlight breaks through clouds, casting shadows and light across Margaret's garden. My daughter wakes, her eyes finding mine with perfect clarity. In them, I see no trace of Brandon's performance, no hint of James's legacy. Just truth, pure and unfiltered. Sometimes that's the greatest revenge of all.
Do you have an extra room? I'm moving in, so you'll need to leave. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law showed up at my new house suddenly. They looked around without even stopping to honor my mother's plaque. Then they demanded that I leave. My husband Jason acted like he didn't care, just lounging on the sofa with our cat. I felt like it was the end, but I decided to calmly say okay and sell the house. I hadn't even lived there much. My name is Madison, and I'm a 30-year-old office worker. I grew up with just my mom, who struggled financially. I worked hard to get scholarships to help her out. She always wanted me to go to college, probably because she didn't have a degree herself. So, I studied a lot while others were out having fun. I got into a top university and landed a job at a big company right after graduating. When I got my first paycheck, my mom and I celebrated by treating ourselves to sushi in Beverly Hills. But when we were at the fancy restaurant, we were both so nervous that we couldn't enjoy the food. I worried about fitting in at a glamorous company because I'd always focused on my studies. But my colleagues were really nice and I managed to do okay. Even though I had a good salary, my mom and I still stuck to our frugal habits. She kept working part-time, and we lived in our small apartment. Our only splurge was going out for nice meals once in a while. Every time we did, my mom would thank me for being such a wonderful daughter who could treat her to meals like that. It made me feel proud, like all my hard work was worth it. But 4 years into my career, my mom's health started to decline. We went on a spa trip hoping it would help, but she didn't get better. She kept going through ups and downs, and I worried constantly about what I would do without her. That's when I met Jason. He was 2 years younger and a smooth talker. At 27, I'd never had a boyfriend because I was always busy with studying and afraid of being judged. Jason effortlessly became a part of my life. We both didn't have dads and loved cats, so we bonded over that. Eventually, he suggested we go to a cafe, and I agreed, feeling excited. He texted me later saying he wanted to ask sooner but was afraid of rejection. I was thrilled, not realizing then that it might have been a line he used before. But I believed he truly cared for me. And as our relationship progressed, something miraculous happened. My mom began to regain her spirits. Seeing me dress up and go out made her smile. She'd say, "I'll take care of the house, you go and have a good time," almost as if she were going on the date herself. I always thought sacrificing my happiness was the way to repay her, but I realized that my happiness made her happy too, just as her happiness was mine. As Jason and I got closer, my mom's health improved, and she spent less time in bed. When I told Jason about a conversation with my mom, he proposed. He said, "Hey, why don't we just get married? That way your mom can rest a little easier." Even though it was only 6 months into our relationship, I was completely smitten with Jason. His sister and mother were hairstylists who ran a salon together, and since they planned to live together in the future, he assured me that it wouldn't be a problem for him to live with my mother. When I introduced Jason to my mother, she was moved to tears and grasped both his hands, saying, "Please take good care of Madison." Jason firmly held her hands in return and declared, while looking into my mother's eyes, "I'm honored, ma'am. I might be younger and not very reliable, but I promise to make Madison happy." At that moment, I was so overjoyed I almost cried. But looking back now, I realized he was nothing but a terrible jerk. I would later come to understand how little experience I had with the opposite sex, or rather, how little I knew about the world. Following his declaration, Jason moved in with us, bringing along a slightly large suitcase. He suggested it would be best to start living together in the house my mother was accustomed to. We welcomed Jason into our small apartment, and while my mother enthusiastically explained how everything worked, he barely listened. He said, "Don't mind me. I doubt I'll be here much." I knew he was often out drinking for work and busy with client golf or surfing on Sundays, so I thought that was what he was referring to. But the reality was different. He truly never came home. On the rare occasions he did, he would just take a bath, sleep, and upon waking up, ask me, "Hey, can you give me some money for food?" At first, I didn't understand and asked him honestly, "Why don't you just eat here? Besides, what about your share of the living expenses?" Jason had not been contributing financially to the household, and my mother and I were living just as we had before. He then laughed with a puzzled look on his face. "Living expenses? Why should I when I'm hardly ever here?" I almost agreed with him for a second, but then I snapped out of it and confronted him. "Wait a minute, we're married, right? That means we're supposed to share our lives together. So you want me to come home every day?" "No, I get that you're busy and maybe staying at friends' places, but I'd like to get a message from you when that's the case." While we were dating, Jason was very attentive, always letting me know if he was going to be late for a date, and he never broke a promise. But after we got married, he stopped reading my texts, and days would go by without a reply. When I brought this up, Jason suddenly turned ice cold and said, "Didn't think you were the kind of woman to say stuff like that," and turned away. His cold expression was something I had never seen before, and it chilled me to the bone. So I blurted out, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be possessive." And he instantly softened, "I know, but come on, we're married, right? Don't you trust me?" he asked, tilting his head. I shook my head vigorously. "No, that's not it. I do trust you," I said, almost in tears, and he looked into my eyes and whispered, "Thank you," then quickly added, "So about $600 will do, okay?" Fearing he might leave me, I gave in and handed over the money. In hindsight, that was the beginning of a nightmare. To avoid worrying my mother, I couldn't confide in her and explained that Jason was just on a lot of business trips. Alone with my thoughts, I continued this strange marriage where I would give money to Jason whenever he occasionally came home. When I finally couldn't stand it anymore and confronted him, he simply wrote his name on a divorce paper and handed it to me, saying, "If you get sick of this, you can leave me at any time." It's strange how humans work. Being given such an option made it impossible for me to leave. Jason had clearly read my mind. My mom noticed something was off with me, but she never tried to address it. As half a year passed, for some reason, My mother-in-law and sister-in-law started coming over to our place more often. Even though they supposedly ran a beauty salon, they'd show up on weekdays or weekends without even bringing a small gift, sit in Jason's room while he was out, and say, "Don't mind us, just some tea and snacks will do." And they'd stay for hours, sometimes even joining us for lunch or dinner. When I eavesdropped on their conversations, they were mostly bad-mouthing others, creating a really unpleasant atmosphere. One day, loud enough for me to hear, my sister-in-law said, "Wow, can't believe he married such a plain Jane. Her fashion sense is so drab." And with reckless abandon, my mother-in-law added, "Well, if she were attractive, she'd probably cheat on you." And they laughed heartily together. They didn't specify who, but I knew they were talking about me. When I was reeling from the shock and covering my ears, I heard the damning words, "Well, she's pretty much a good cash cow, isn't she?" "And with only her mom around," said my sister-in-law, and my mother-in-law chimed in with a worldly tone. "Seems easy enough to get money out of her. Plus, we get to do whatever we want." And they cackled again. I wanted to storm out of the room and tell them to leave, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Since that day, I've been feeling really down. Jason, as usual, didn't come home and didn't even read my messages. During this time, I failed to notice my mom's health deteriorating again. Then, one day at work, I got a call that my mom had been rushed to the hospital by ambulance. When I got there, I found out she had fallen down the stairs of our apartment complex, severely injuring her back. The doctor said that given her age, she'd likely have to use a wheelchair from now on. From what I was told, Mom had been feeling under the weather for quite some time, experiencing frequent bouts of dizziness. It seems that dizziness was the culprit behind her fall down the stairs. My mom kept apologizing, saying, "I'm so sorry, Madison. I'm really sorry." Over and over. My mom kept apologizing, and I just shook my head, crying. I was determined to break through this tough situation. Given that my mom's hospital stay would be quite long, including rehabilitation, I decided to look for a wheelchair-accessible home. Fortunately, we had lived frugally, so there was a decent amount of savings. My mom always loved looking at home ads in the newspapers, often saying how much she'd like to live in such houses. I held on to the hope that buying the home she dreamt of might bring her spirit back. When I asked Jason for his opinion, he casually said, "Why not? I'd like my own room." "Oh yeah, let's get a cat too." Seeing Jason's happy face for the first time in a long while made me foolishly happy. So, I enthusiastically started house hunting. Luckily, I found the perfect spec house right in our neighborhood. It was completely wheelchair accessible. I felt it was destiny and made an immediate purchase. I could afford a down payment of around $360,000, and thanks to being employed by a top-notch company, the mortgage was easily approved. Of course, Jason didn't contribute a dime, but that had become the norm. He only visited my mom once at the hospital. By the way, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, despite their frequent visits to our house, never came to see her. I hurried to finalize the house deal before my mom was discharged and managed to move us. Imperfectly, it was honestly exhausting to balance work and moving, but thinking of my mom and Jason's happy faces, I pushed through. When my mom came to the new house in her wheelchair, her eyes sparkled as she looked around our model home-like place and exclaimed like a child, "I can't believe I get to live in a house like this. It feels like a dream." Jason, too, seemed to like his new room as he started coming home more often. Then, we went to the pet store together and brought home 2 adorable cats. Both Jason and my mom doted on the cats, and our home was filled with lively energy. Just as I was starting to think everything might turn out okay, tragedy struck again. 2 months after moving in, one morning, my mom didn't wake up. I found it strange and went to check on her, only to discover she had passed away cold. I called an ambulance, but it was too late. She had suffered a heart attack. With the new house and everything else, life seemed so pointless now. I was overwhelmed by despair and hardly remember the funeral proceedings. Jason acted the part of the dutiful, gentle husband at the funeral, But as soon as we got home, he'd do nothing. But he just flopped on the couch and said, "Man, I'm beat," tossing the TV remote carelessly on a shelf. Then he asked me, "When's dinner?" As I sat holding my mother's memorial plaque and played with the cat. Seeing this, I finally snapped back to reality. I'd realized a long time ago that my marriage was a mistake, but I'd been pretending everything was fine so as not to worry my mother. I also didn't want to admit my failure to myself. But can I really call him my husband if he doesn't even comfort me as I mourn my beloved mother? As I was staring at my so-called husband, dumbfounded, the doorbell rang. When I went to answer it, my sister-in-law and mother-in-law, still dressed in their mourning clothes, barged in, saying, "Wow, this place is huge. Why didn't you tell us about it?" You see, neither my mother nor I had given my mother-in-law our new address. I assumed Jason would tell them, but it seemed he hadn't bothered, perhaps out of disinterest. As they walked around the house, eyeing everything greedily, they smirked at each other and said, "You've got spare rooms, right? We'll live here. You can leave." It seemed they were under the impression Jason bought the house. Jason, meanwhile, continued to relax on the couch with the cat, seemingly oblivious to everything. Looking up to the heavens, I thought it was all over. And then my mother-in-law, still hiked up, said, "The apartment we're living in now is so noisy. The landlord comes every day just because we're a bit behind on the rent." That's when I realized their frequent visits were to escape from their landlord. My sister-in-law grinned and said, "I'll take the upstairs south room." Madison always had a knack for choosing the good spots, didn't she? They saw my mother's death as an opportunity to shamelessly move themselves into my home. Naturally, I thought, I'll send these people packing to hell. Fine, I'll leave. Take care then. As soon as I agreed, they nearly jumped for joy and said to Jason, "Jason, we can live together again. You really can't manage without us, can you?" Jason, perhaps too tired to care, lazily laughed and said, Yeah, I'm off to bed," and retreated to his room. With spring in their step, my sister-in-law and mother-in-law told me, "We'll be moving in on Tuesday in 2 weeks, so make sure you're out by then," and left. "Next week, huh?" I murmured, carefully placing my mother's memorial plaque, portrait, and ashes on the shelf, and whispered to her picture, "Watch over me, Mom," as if she was smiling back at me, saying, "Give them hell." I promptly filled out the divorce papers I prepared earlier and rushed them to the courthouse, then started plotting my revenge. Come Monday, I was sitting at a cafe terrace with a view of the new house, hat pulled down over my eyes waiting. There was a "For Sale" sign by the new house's doorplate. The autumn sky was clear, and as I was leisurely reading a book, a moving truck pulled up in front of the house, and out stepped Jason, my sister-in-law, and mother-in-law. I knew that Jason had been helping them move over the weekend. I had demurely asked him, "Please don't come back until the moving day. If I see you, I might get sentimental." They were perplexed by the "For Sale" sign. The "For Sale" sign caught everyone's attention, but Jason nonchalantly suggested it might be a prank and tried to open the door with his key, which of course didn't fit. I had changed the locks. Jason was frantically rattling the keys, and both my sister-in-law and mother-in-law looked on with anxious expressions. Frantically, he fiddled with the key as the movers looked on, ready to start. "What's the meaning of this?" my sister-in-law and mother-in-law demanded, irritation rising in their voices. Jason, still seemingly unfazed, said, "I'll just make a call." And that's when my phone vibrated. I ignored it, and as he couldn't get through to me, panic began to set in on his face. The two women looked on anxiously as they and Jason received frosty stares from the movers. Finally, he called someone else, the real estate agency listed on the sign. And there I was, sipping my coffee. "Hello, I'm calling about a property in." Yes, it's being sold without my consent. Could you come over here, please?" Jason began to explain on the phone when he was interrupted. "It's already being sold by the owner." "No, that can't be right. You want to sell it if I want to buy it?" "What are you talking about?" Please hold on." And he hung up the phone. Then my sister-in-law and mother-in-law, with faces like furious demons, stormed up to Jason and demanded, "Hold on a minute. Isn't this the house you bought?" "No. I mean, it's not that I bought it. But isn't it considered joint property if you're married? Madison can't just sell it without consent," he retorted with surprising confidence. So I stepped in to deal with it myself. Surprised, my sister-in-law and mother-in-law turned to me and nearly snapped. "What have you done with this house?" I responded with a sleep voice. "What have I done? I sold it. It's my property after all. Feel free to buy it if you want." "Oh, I thought living here meant that kind of arrangement," playing dumb. Jason turned pale and started, "Hey, you can't just do whatever you." To which I shot back, "What are you talking about? You haven't contributed a dime. And to talk about joint property when you haven't even contributed to living expenses since we got married? How dare you?" For the first time in my life, I was yelling at someone out of anger. Jason was taken aback by the sudden resistance from a woman who used to be compliant to him. I continued to press Jason. "You better give me back all the money I've given you. I'm ready with a lawyer," and shoved a business card and a claim for alimony in his face. I've always kept a household account book, so I had carefully calculated all the money I'd given to Jason. Though it was only a year and a half of marriage, the money I had handed over amounted to nearly $20,000. When Jason floundered, saying, "That was supposed to be for our living expenses, wasn't it?" "You can't just claim that," my sister-in-law and mother-in-law also chimed in. "Exactly. What are you even saying? A housewife receiving living expenses is a given. Claiming that back is terrifying for an elite woman," to which I shouted back, "Shut up. Don't meddle in someone else's business. And you too? Have some nerve." It felt like something inside me had exploded. Both my sister-in-law and mother-in-law seemed overwhelmed by my outburst and began to tremble, holding each other. There was no way I was going to lose to these women who were always bad-mouthing others behind their backs. Jason started to back away, looking like he might run off at any moment. He was the type of man who'd run when things got tough. No use in running. I said firmly, "I'm going to make sure you settle this properly." It seemed my resolve had an impact. Jason, too, collapsed just like my sister-in-law and mother-in-law, looking completely lost. The movers, looking troubled, said, Where should we move the items to?" I replied, though it felt cruel, "I don't know, ask them," wondering where to move to when they don't even have a house, and I just smiled sweetly. What happened to them after they lost their place to go? I don't know. They probably rented a new apartment through some contacts of Jason. Jason had quit his job at a company soon after marrying me. He was scouted for a nightclub because of his playboy skills. Every night, he used the money for me like water. And while it seemed to go well at first, by the time I built our new house, he was scraping by. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law, unaware of such things, had come to depend on Jason's supposed financial strength based on the new house he had built and moved in as soon as my mother passed away. They used to say, "The beauty salon business is going well lately. We can support you so you don't have to worry about anything." But in reality, the beauty salon managed by my mother-in-law had long since gone under. Swamped with debt and lacking real skill as hairdressers, they couldn't hold down jobs at any salon they went to. They had both been planning to rely on each other and ended up failing. Eventually, Jason got into trouble with some shady characters and disappeared. It was a fitting end for such a deadbeat man. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law are also missing, and I can't help but think they haven't exactly had the best lives. I couldn't get alimony from Jason, but I've come to see it as the cost of a life lesson. After the divorce, people have said I seem different, and somehow I've entered what you'd call my prime time for attracting others. It seems I used to be seen as serious and quiet, but now there's a certain settled confidence about me that has become attractive. I had been quite put off by the idea of marriage for a while, but as I started dining out with men more often, whenever the mood seemed to set right for something more, I excused myself to go home because of my cats. Their reaction in such moments is quite telling of their character, so it's been a good strategy for sizing up men. In reality, I live in a pet-friendly apartment with my 2 cats. The other day, as I was sorting through my mother's belongings, I found a letter addressed to me. It was dated the month before she passed, right around when I'd settled into my new place. The letter was filled with various memories from my childhood through to my professional life. And it ended with her usual phrase, to live in such a nice home, to lead such a good life. I've been blessed with a wonderful daughter. Thank you so much. I hugged that letter from my mother tightly and cried my eyes out for a while. Buying that new place definitely wasn't a waste. I've come to realize, from here on out, I'm committed to living positively and earnestly, keeping my mother's words close to my heart, and hoping to make someone feel as rewarded by me as I felt by her. When I was growing up, I always felt like I was different from my family. My name is Jenny, and my family has a long history of owning restaurants. My dad, Joe, is a big and loud man who runs our family restaurant very strictly. My mom, Linda, is always busy managing the staff. Then there's my older brother, Mike. He's seen as the perfect one to take over the business. I remember one night at dinner, the smell of Dad's famous roast filled the air. Mom was excited about a new recipe they were trying. She asked me if I'd like it because it had a fancy herb I enjoyed. I mumbled my answer while picking at my food. Mike laughed and said, "Who cares about herbs? The real excitement is the new grill Dad's getting for the restaurant." Dad nodded, looking at me, and asked when I'd start showing interest in the restaurant. I felt small and unsure, saying I liked being outside with plants and stuff. Mom and Dad didn't understand. They thought I needed a real job to fall back on. I always felt a knot in my stomach during these conversations. But there was one person who understood me, Grandma Rose. She lived in a small house with a beautiful garden. She was gentle and patient, unlike my parents. I often went to her house to escape the talk of the restaurant. One day, I found her in the garden, and she asked me to help plant tulips. I asked her why Mom and Dad didn't understand my love for plants. Grandma Rose looked at me with her wise eyes and said that my parents just wanted what's best for me. But they don't see the world like we do. There's magic in these plants in the earth. It's okay to be different. Grandma Rosa's words resonated with me. Even as the pressure from my family grew, I clung to her wisdom. Mike, my brother, often teased me, calling me the gardener in a mocking way. His friends would laugh along, but I just brushed it off. They didn't understand the beauty I saw in every leaf, the peace in the morning dew. But I did, and when my hands were in the soil, I felt like I belonged. High school graduation felt like a crossroads. While my family buzzed with excitement over Mike joining Dad at the restaurant, I felt like a spectator in my own life. One evening, as we gathered in the living room, Dad talked enthusiastically about expanding the restaurant. He praised Mike for his upcoming role. Feeling invisible, I fiddled with a loose thread on the couch until Mom's sharp voice snapped me back. "What about you, Jenny? Ready to step up?" she asked, suggesting I work at the restaurant. It was now or never. "Actually, I'm not going to work at the restaurant. I'm going to study landscape design," I said, barely above a whisper. The room fell silent. Dad's face turned red with anger. "Landscape what now?" he barked, dismissing it as no career for me. Mike sneered, suggesting I just plant flowers for a living. My cheeks burned with embarrassment, but I stood my ground. "Yes, actually, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm good at it, and I love it," I declared. Mom looked confused and worried, urging me to be sensible. But I felt a surge of defiance. "It's not just playing in the dirt, Mom. It's creating something beautiful, something real. I'm not asking for your approval. But I am telling you, this is my decision," I asserted firmly. Dad slammed his hand on the table, his voice booming with anger. "If you choose this foolishness, you're on your own. Don't expect any help from us," he warned. I felt a knot in my stomach, but my voice remained steady. "Fine, I'll do it on my own." Grandma Rose, who had been quietly knitting in the corner, finally spoke up. Her voice was calm but carried weight. "Joe, Let the girl follow her heart. She's got a gift, and it would be a sin to waste it, she said, her eyes fixed on Dad. Dad let out a frustrated grunt, turning away. Fine, do what you want. But don't come crying to us when it all falls apart, he muttered. As I turned to leave the room, my heart pounding, Mike called out after me with sarcasm. Good luck, gardener. Let's see how far those flowers get you. Stepping into college life felt like diving into deep water. It was thrilling yet daunting. Jenny, was far from the familiar paths of my family's expectations, ready to carve my own way in the world of landscape design. I still remember the buzz of the first day in class, the room swirling with the energy of eager students. I found a spot in the back, trying to shrink into the shadows. That's when Zoe, a girl with fire engine red hair and eyes full of mischief, dropped into the seat next to me. Hey there, newbie. I'm Zoe, a first-timer in landscape design. She introduced herself. I gave a shy nod. Yeah, I'm Jenny. It's all a bit overwhelming. Zoe's laugh was loud and genuine. You'll fit right in. Wait till you get your hands into the real dirt. It's epic. What dragged you into this world? She asked. I hesitated, the memory of my family's disapproval still fresh. I've always loved plants, the outdoors. It's where I feel right, you know? Her grin widened. Perfect place for you then. Classes were a whirlwind of learning and creating. I absorbed things like a sponge, from the science of soils to the art of design. I was finally speaking a language I loved. After one particularly intense session, Mr. Davidson, our professor, a man as tall and sturdy as an oak, called me over. Jenny, your designs. There's something else. You've got a real knack for this, he said, his voice serious. Mr. Davidson's encouragement stunned me. Really, thank you, Mr. Davidson. I'm just trying to do my best, I replied humbly. Leaning forward, his eyes piercing, he said, There's potential in you. Don't let it go to waste. Push harder. His words became my mantra. I moved into a studio, my designs becoming more ambitious, more expressive. It was exhausting but exhilarating. But even in those moments of joy, a part of me yearned for my family. Despite everything, one quiet evening, I gathered the courage to call home. The phone rang, each tone heavy with anticipation. Finally, Mom's sharp voice came through. What do you want, Jenny? Her tone stung, but I pushed on. I just wanted to check in, see how everyone is, I said. She snorted, her voice dripping with scorn. Oh, now you care. After running off to play in the dirt, abandoning your own family. Clenching my teeth, I fought to keep my voice steady. I didn't abandon anyone, Mom. I just chose a different path. Her laugh was bitter. A dead-end path, you mean? Don't expect us to be here waiting when it all crumbles around you. The call ended soon after, leaving a sour taste in my mouth, but also fueling a fire in me. I dove back into my work with a new intensity, determined to prove not just to my family, but to myself that I was on the right path. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, and mine came in the form of a phone call during my final year of college. It was Aunt Clara, my mom's sister, her voice shaky and strained. Jenny, it's about your Grandma Rose. She passed away last night, Aunt Clara said, her voice cracking with emotion. I felt the ground slip away beneath me. Grandma Rose had been my rock, the one person who believed in my dreams. Losing her felt like losing a part of myself. The funeral was a somber affair. My family was there, all stiff and formal. Dad, Mom, and Mike looked like strangers to me. After the service, I overheard Mom talking to Aunt Clara. I still can't believe she left that house to Jenny. What's she going to do with it? She can barely take care of herself, Mom said, her voice dripping with disapproval. I felt a surge of anger, but I bit my tongue. I didn't want a confrontation, not there, not then. The will reading was a few days later. Grandma Rose had left me her house, the beautiful garden haven where I had spent countless hours. My family was shocked, their whispers sharp as thorns. Why would she leave it to Jenny? She's never around anyway, Mike muttered under his breath. Dad's face was like thunder. This is ridiculous. That house could have been sold, put money into the restaurant, he said angrily. I stood up, my voice steady but firm. Grandma knew I loved that house, that garden. It was where we spent so much time together. I'm going to keep it, just as she wanted. Mom's response was cold and harsh. So you're just going to live there alone? Playing in the dirt? What a waste. Their words stung, but I had made up my mind. I moved into Grandma's house, immersing myself in the garden she had loved so dearly. I started renovating the place, pouring my heart into every plant, every flower bed. As the months passed, I transformed Grandma's garden into something truly special. It became my sanctuary, a place where I could be myself, away from the judgment and expectations of my family. The day the invitation to Mike's wedding arrived at my doorstep was a day of mixed feelings. It was a fancy piece of paper, golden letters against a white background, representing a part of my life I had left behind. Staring at it, I felt a storm of emotions churn inside me. I decided to go, but on my terms. I dressed in a way that felt true to me, elegant but simple, a far cry from the dirt-stained clothes I used to wear. As they entered the restaurant, the sights and sounds of my past life engulfed me. Spotting my family across the room, Mom, Dad, and Mike, all dressed up and looking like a picture-perfect family, I braced myself and walked over. Jenny, I didn't think you'd accept the invitation. Mom's voice was sharp, cutting through the noise. I came to see Mike get married. It's a family event, isn't it? I replied, trying to keep my voice level. Mike glanced at me, his smirk familiar and unwelcome. What's the matter? Ran out of bushes to trim. Decided to play dress up for a change. I felt a familiar sting, but I brushed it off. I'm just here to wish well, Mike. It was then that his bride, a tall woman with a haughty look, chimed in. Oh, this is the infamous gardener sister. Did you manage to scrub the dirt from under your nails, dear? Or is it your natural look? Her words were sharp and mocking, hanging in the air. I clenched my jaw, refusing to let her see how deeply they cut. I clean up just fine, thanks for asking. Congratulations to you both. Dad's eyes were cold, his voice colder. Your being here doesn't erase the past, Jenny. You chose your path. Their words were like thorns, but I had grown a thick skin. I'm not here to rehash old arguments, just wanted to wish Mike a happy married life. I was quickly ushered to a small table in the corner, away from the family. Sitting there, I could feel the curious stares and hushed whispers. That's the gardener, they whispered, the black sheep of the family. But as I sat there, a sense of pride welled up in me. Yes, I was the gardener, the one who had dared to follow her own path. I was no longer the shy, unsure girl they remembered, but a woman who had found her strength, who had bloomed in spite of them. My discomfort only grew as the evening stretched on. Sipping my drink, I tried to make myself invisible. But that plan fell apart when I caught the eye of some guys I knew from childhood. Mike's friends, the same ones who used to join him in mocking me. Look who's here, the family's little dirt digger, one of them, Jake, sneered as they approached. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Actually, it's landscape designer, but I wouldn't expect you to understand the difference. Their laughter was harsh, grating. Oh, listen to her. Thinks she's all high and mighty now, Chris added with a scoff. I bit back a sharp retort, my hands clenching under the table. I've worked hard for my success. My job is more than just playing in the dirt. Their amusement was cut short when an elderly man at the next table interjected, his expression growing increasingly disapproving. I've seen this young lady's work. The new park downtown, that's hers. It's outstanding, shows. The group was visibly taken aback, their smugness faltering. Muttering under their breath, they slunk away, their egos bruised. Emboldened, I decided to venture out from my safe corner, mingling through the crowd, dodging glances and whispers. That's when I overheard Mike speaking to a group of his friends. She's always been the odd one, more into her plants than real work, Mike said, his voice laced with a mix of amusement and disdain. His friend laughed loudly. Every family's got its black sheep, huh? Their words were like a slap, raw and stinging. I walked away, my heart pounding, reminding myself that their opinions didn't define me. As I weaved through the crowd, I bumped into my cousin Lucy, a quiet presence in our loud family. "Hey Jenny, I've seen some of your designs. They're really something," she said, her voice sincere. I managed a small smile. "Thanks, Lucy. It means a lot, especially today." Lucy looked at me, her eyes understanding. "I never agreed with how they treated you. You're doing amazing things. I'm glad you stuck to your path." Her words were a small comfort amidst the thorns of the evening. We chatted briefly, a momentary respite from the tension. As Lucy drifted away, I returned to my corner, feeling the weight of the evening. The loud music, the clinking glasses, and the bursts of laughter around me felt like they were happening in a different world. I sat there, sipping my drink, longing for the celebration to end. The wedding night was winding down, its fancy aura overshadowed by my own tangled feelings. Just when I thought the night couldn't get any more surreal, the mayor, a distant relative of Mike's bride, took the stage for his speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's a delight to be here," he began, his voice booming across the room. "But tonight, I want to highlight a special guest among us, a true star in the world of landscape design, Jenny." Hearing my name, I almost choked on my drink. I stood up hesitantly, feeling like a deer caught in headlights. The mayor beamed at me. "Jenny here is the brilliant mind behind the transformation of our city park. She's a celebrated landscape designer who's won multiple awards for her incredible work. Let's give her the recognition she deserves." The room erupted into applause, a sound that felt foreign to me. Glancing at my family's table, I saw their faces, a mix of shock and embarrassment. Mike's bride leaned towards him, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Is he talking about your sister, the gardener?" Mike mumbled something, looking like he wished the floor would swallow him up. The mayor's praise continued. "Jenny's work has revitalized our city. She's a true talent." Amidst the clapping, I felt a surge of confidence. The mayor's words were like a light, dispelling the shadows of doubt and scorn from my family. Then, seizing the moment, I decided to speak up. "Thank you, Mayor, for your kind words. It's an honor to contribute to our city's beauty." I paused, my gaze sweeping over the crowd, settling on my family. "It's funny, isn't it, how life turns out? Mike, you and your bride are perfect for each other. Your shared talent for rudeness to others is quite remarkable." The room went silent, the air thick with tension. My parents, my brother, and his fiancée blushed deep red, their shame as visible as if I'd slapped them. Mom's voice cut through the silence, sharp as a knife. "Jenny, what are you saying?" "This is your brother's wedding," Mom interjected, her voice laced with concern. I met her gaze unflinching. "Just speaking the truth, Mom, something our family seems to struggle with." Mike stood up, his face red with anger. "You can't come here and talk to us like that." I held my ground, my voice steady. "I've earned my right to speak, Mike. Maybe it's time you all listened." The confrontation ended with Mike sitting down defeated, and the room slowly buzzing back to life. The mayor gave me a nod of respect before moving on. As I sat back down, the weight of the night lifted slightly. I had spoken my piece, stood up for myself in a way I never had before. I was no longer just the gardener or the outcast. I was Jenny, a recognized landscape designer, someone who had grown past her family's narrow expectations. After Mike's wedding, word got out about my success as a landscape designer. People were buzzing about the awards I'd won and the projects I'd aced. It felt like stepping into the sunlight after years in the shadows. And then my family came calling. One afternoon, while I was busy sketching out a new garden design, my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice had a sweetness to it that felt out of place. "Jenny, darling, we've been hearing so much about your work. Your father and I are so proud of you," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "Really? That's a change of tune." There was a pause on the line. "Well, we were thinking maybe you could come over. We'd love to see you, catch up on things." I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. "Catch up or catch onto my bank account?" I shot back. Mom's voice faltered. "Jenny, that's not fair. We're family." The word family hit a nerve. Family like when you all but disown me for following my dreams. Seems like family matters when there's money in the picture. Before she could respond, I ended the call. I wasn't about to let them back into my life just because they smelled success. A few days later, there was a knock at my door. Mike was standing there, hands in his pockets, looking everywhere but at me. "Hey, Jenny, can we talk?" he mumbled. I crossed my arms. This should be good. "What do you want, Mike?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I know we haven't been great, but you're doing well, and I was wondering if you could, help me out a bit." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Help you out? After years of calling me the gardener and laughing at my ambitions? Mike's face reddened. "I didn't mean it like that. It's just that things are tough." I cut him off. "Save it, Mike. I'm not your ATM. You and the family made it clear how you felt about me. You can't just waltz back into my life when it's convenient." After he left, I sat in my garden, surrounded by the beauty I had created. My phone rang a few more times over the next week. More attempts at reconciliation from my family, but I didn't answer. I was done with their fair-weather affection. I had built a life for myself, one that didn't need their validation or their greed. I was happy, successful, and free from the toxic ties that had once bound me. This wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a whole new book, my book, and I was going to make sure it was a bestseller, written on my own terms, in my own style. The new growth in my life was just starting, and I was ready for whatever came next. My wife and daughter left me when I got very sick. Years later, they came back to take over my house, but let me tell you what happened from the start. First, I found out I had a serious illness called advanced Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was a shock because I've always been healthy. I ate well, stayed active, and went to the doctor regularly. The doctor said they didn't know exactly why I got sick, but there was a small chance I could survive with tough treatment. When I told my wife, Daisy, and our daughter, Luna, they were really upset. I promised them I would fight the illness with everything I had, but I worried about how it would change our family. The doctor said the treatment would be hard, and some marriages don't make it through. That night, I talked to my wife about my worries. She promised she would stay with me and help me through everything. Luckily, we were in a good financial situation. We had good insurance, savings, and money from my late grandfather. Our house was paid off, and I had money saved for Luna's college. I started chemotherapy a week later. It was really tough. When I came home, I felt exhausted. I could barely do anything, not even take care of myself. But my wife and daughter took care of me. They cooked, cleaned, drove me to the hospital, and made sure I had my medicine. I tried not to ask too much of them because I didn't want to be a burden. This went on for 2 hard months. However, things started to get tense with my wife and daughter. They seemed reluctant to help me, and my daughter stopped responding when I asked for simple things like water or some fresh air. One day, I had an early appointment for treatment, and my wife hadn't come downstairs. When I asked her about it, she just told me to take an Uber because she was tired. It was surprising and upsetting, but I didn't know what else to do, so I called for an Uber and asked the hospital for help. Luckily, the Uber driver was really kind and made sure I got to the hospital safely. When I got back home, things hadn't gotten any better. So I finally gathered the courage to talk to my wife and daughter about their behavior. They admitted they were feeling overwhelmed, and my daughter said she didn't expect me to need so much help. I suggested hiring a nurse to assist me with daily tasks and take me to my appointments. They agreed, and we found a nurse who was really helpful. But even with the nurse, my wife and daughter still seemed unhappy. My wife felt like the nurse was taking her place. I offered to let my wife take over the nurse's responsibilities if she was willing to do everything the nurse did. She agreed, but wasn't happy about it. She even suggested getting a male nurse, but there weren't any available. I tried to explain that the nurse was chosen because she had experience with patients like me. Despite my efforts to help, my wife was still upset. She thought I should be doing more for myself instead of relying on everyone else. I tried to explain that there were days when I could barely move because of the treatment, but she didn't seem to understand. Later, my mother-in-law called and complained about having another woman in her daughter's house. But technically, the house was mine before we got married. But I chose to handle the situation calmly. I explained to my mother-in-law that I needed more help than her daughter could give me, so I had to bring in a nurse to ease the burden on my family. I assured her that the nurse would only be there temporarily for the rest of my chemotherapy treatments, unless my condition got worse. She wasn't completely convinced, but she eventually left me alone. For about a week after that, things seemed normal. My treatment was going well. Then, one day after coming back from chemotherapy, I saw a moving truck outside my house. My wife and daughter had packed up and said they were going to stay with their mother. I was hurt and upset, but I was too tired to express how I felt properly. It felt especially cruel that they left right after my chemo sessions when I was at my weakest. I asked my daughter if this was what she really wanted. She said she'd rather live with her mother because it was too hard to live with me. It was heartbreaking to watch them leave, tears filling my eyes. It was exactly what I had feared when my chemo started, feeling unwanted and abandoned. In the midst of my sadness, my brother stepped in. He noticed the nurse spending extra time with me and asked if I had any family nearby who could help. My brother lived 3 hours away and had his own kids, but he offered to help. But he generously offered to take time off work to stay with me until I found a more permanent solution. When he arrived, he was angry about what my wife had done, calling her selfish and ungrateful. He pointed out that she never had to work since we got married, and had always made sure she had everything she needed. My brother could only stay for a week, but he had another idea. His wife's sister, Kara, was going through a tough divorce and needed a safe place to stay temporarily. Her soon-to-be ex-husband was the main breadwinner, leaving her with limited money. Kara was also studying nearby on a scholarship. My house was close to her university, making it a good option. I wouldn't be alone, and she would have a safe place away from her difficult situation. I agreed to let Kara stay without paying rent since she'd be helping me out. She could choose any bedroom she wanted. My wife and daughter had taken most of the stuff, leaving just the bed and a few clothes. My brother helped Kara move in, and she promised to be helpful and considerate. I told her she wouldn't need to do too much since my nurse would be coming more often now. In the following weeks, things went smoothly. I missed my wife and daughter, but they didn't even bother to check up on me. Kara was a huge help, taking care of groceries, cleaning, and cooking without complaining. About a month and a half after my wife left, I got the news that I was cancer-free. It was a big moment, celebrated at the hospital by ringing a bell. My nurse asked what I wanted to do next, now that I was cured. I decided to file for divorce, freeing myself from a marriage that hadn't supported me during my illness. With the divorce process started, I focused on recovering from cancer. It was a slow journey, but I started to feel stronger. My hair grew back, my scar healed, and I gained weight. I stuck to a healthy diet mostly but treated myself occasionally to the foods I missed. It's been 6 months since I was declared cancer-free, and I'm ready to move on. My old job is willing to rehire me for remote work, so I'm thinking of taking that and moving away. While I'm attached to my house, it holds too many painful memories. I want a fresh start, and I plan to give the house to Kara. She's been there for me when I needed it most. When I was at my lowest, Kara showed immense kindness, even though we were practically strangers. She's free to sell the house if she wants. I don't want anything to do with it, especially if it means my wife or daughter could claim it. My new place is in a quiet countryside neighborhood, and I'm eagerly looking forward to this new beginning. Update number 1. Hey wife and daughter. It's been over a year since my diagnosis, and I've settled into my new place nicely. I've made friends with my neighbors, including Sophia, who lives across the way. She's a widow who invited me over for drinks and shared her story of losing her husband to cancer. She emphasized the importance of life insurance. I'd opened up about what happened with my wife and daughter, but surprisingly, I still haven't heard from them. I've been pursuing new hobbies, like woodworking, and I'm starting to build up a collection of tools. One day, Sophia noticed some people hanging around my house who matched the description of my wife and daughter. It left me wondering why they were looking for me. Sophia assured me she'd handle it if they returned, and I had no desire to interact with them after they abandoned me. Later, I found out they had been harassing Kara and her roommate at my old house. Fortunately, Kara had proof that the house was hers now, and she explained she had bought it for me. I felt bad and apologized to Kara. Hopefully, I can resolve the situation for good if they come back. As for my wife, I'm not sure if she's aware of the divorce papers. I've reached a point where I don't care anymore. Update number 2. My wife and daughter showed up at the house again. Once again, my wife and daughter showed up at the house, but this time it was earlier in the day while I was working. I heard the knock and decided to check the security cameras, and indeed, it was them. My ex-wife looked just as I remembered, but Luna had grown significantly. She was practically a young woman now. I followed the plan Sophia and I had discussed, staying inside but moving closer to the door to hear them better. Sophia, being the good neighbor she is, came over to greet them and introduced herself. My wife asked if she knew a man named Charlie who used to live there. Sophia sounded just as baffled as I was and questioned her use of used to. My wife explained that her husband, not ex-husband, had lived in this house before his recent untimely death following an extended hospital stay. My jaw dropped at this revelation because, to my knowledge, there was no record of my death anywhere, especially not at the hospital where I underwent treatment. My wife went on to claim that they were the next of kin, implying that the home was rightfully theirs. Sophia informed them that someone named Charlie did live there for a while but clarified that he was a divorcee. She also shared that during our time as neighbors, I had informed her that my wife had left me, and I had filed for a unilateral divorce. Sophia added that as far as she knew, I intended to bequeath all my assets to charity since I had no other family besides my brother. This was why she found it strange to see two women snooping around my house. The conversation fell into an uncomfortable silence before Sophia inquired if they had a death certificate or a will. They replied in the negative. Sophia explained that once they had those documents, they could take them to the county's record office. If they were indeed the rightful owners of the property, they could then get the deed in their name. My wife did not take kindly to this suggestion. She asked Sophia who she thought she was and started screaming, asserting that Sophia had no authority to interfere in her affairs. She also accused Sophia of being nosy and demanded that she mind her own business. I felt a deep sense of embarrassment. The people in this neighborhood had been nothing but kind to me, and here my ex-wife was making a scene and disturbing their peace. Part of me wanted to go out there and give her a piece of my mind. Despite the chaos, I chose to stick with our plan. Sophia, bless her heart, apologized to them and explained that she was merely trying to be helpful. After they left, I went over to Sophia's place to apologize. She brushed it off, mentioning that while she found my wife's behavior repulsive, she also found the outbursts somewhat amusing. My wife came back again yesterday. I was working in my home office when I heard a loud crash. Rushing out to the living room, I found my front window smashed, and my neighbors were outside trying to stop her. Apparently, she had been causing a ruckus for a while, but I hadn't heard it because I had noise-canceling headphones on. Both my ex-wife and daughter were holding bats, and they had already broken a few of my plants. I asked her if she had lost her marbles and told her to get off my property before I called the cops. Unbeknownst to me, my neighbors had already placed the call. She seemed hurt by my words and asked why I hadn't contacted her after I got better. She insisted that she and Luna would have come back. I told her that we made vows to stand by each other in sickness and health, and she broke those vows. I wanted nothing to do with her anymore. She asked about Luna and mentioned that she's going to college next year and can't afford tuition on her own. I replied that her daughter was fine with abandoning me too, and I'm ready to give up all my parental rights. I don't want anything to do with either of them. After hearing that, she swung at me with a bat just as the cop showed up. They immediately arrested both her and my daughter. They asked if I wanted to press charges, and of course I did. After work, I ordered a new window and cleaned up the glass. Sophia gave me some buckets to put my plants in until I can replace the pots. Curious about what brought my ex-wife back, I did some digging. It turns out her mom passed away 2 months ago, and they found out the house they had been staying in didn't belong to her or her husband. With both of my ex-wife's parents now gone, she and our daughter sold most of their belongings and have been living in a motel. When they came back to our old home and saw Kara there, they assumed I had died and went snooping around for recordings of my assets and purchases, which is how they found me. Regardless, they're facing charges of vandalism, attempted break-in, and attempted assault. Since Luna is a minor, she's receiving community service, but my ex-wife is facing time behind bars as this was clearly premeditated. I'm considering obtaining a restraining order as well. At least for now, I won't have to worry about her for a good long while. My name is Evelyn Warner, and everything I thought I knew about my life changed suddenly one Thursday evening. Richard, my husband of 15 years, came home, but he wasn't alone. He had a young woman named Clara with him, holding onto his arm. Clara was only 23, and she looked smug, which felt strange in our home. Without any warning, Richard dropped a bombshell. He wanted a divorce. He said Clara would be living with us now, and he declared that the house belonged to her. His voice was cold, not the warmth I was used to hearing. I couldn't believe what was happening. My heart raced with disbelief and confusion. I had heard of such things, but I never thought I would be experiencing it. I stayed calm, but it was more from shock than anything else. "I can't believe you're serious," I managed to say quietly. Richard laughed, a sound that felt unfamiliar and distant to me now. "I've been thinking about this for a long time. You just didn't see it coming," he said. Clara looked at me with a look of triumph. Richard said he was tired of me and that Clara understood him better. It felt like I was living in a nightmare. Richard, the man I love and the father of our child, seemed like a stranger. I couldn't believe he was throwing away our marriage and our family for Clara. I felt a bitterness in my voice that I didn't know I had. "So this is it? You're choosing her over us?" I asked, feeling betrayed by his words. Despite the pain, I began to see things clearly. Richard was revealing his true self, and it wasn't pretty. "You're willing to ruin everything for a fling?" I questioned, my voice stronger now. "It's much more than that, Evelyn. Clara is my future, and you're just the past," Richard said dismissively. I looked at Clara, a girl young enough to be our daughter, caught up in what she thought was love. But I saw it differently. It was a midlife crisis, a cruel game. "Fine," I said, the shock turning into determination. "You want a divorce? You'll get it. But remember, Richard, this house is as much mine as it is yours, and I won't give it up without a fight." As they walked past me, I felt a shiver of disgust, not just at the sight of them together, but at my own blindness. But this wasn't the end. It was a beginning of my fight for my dignity, for my child, for what was rightfully mine. In the days that followed, I was consumed by emotions. Memories of our life together were tainted by Richard's betrayal. I couldn't eat or sleep, haunted by images of him with Clara, their laughter echoing in my ears. But amidst the turmoil, a plan formed in my mind. I wouldn't let Richard get away with it. This wasn't just about the house or the marriage, it was about justice. I was going to make him regret his decision, regret ever thinking he could discard me so easily. I sought out the best divorce lawyer in town, someone known for their ruthless efficiency. As I explained my situation to Miss Johnson, her eyes sharpened with determination. "Richard thinks he can just replace you and walk away with everything." "Not on my watch," she said. We went over the legalities, and it became clear that Richard had underestimated me. The house, which he had arrogantly promised to Clara, was partly mine by law. The land it stood on was inherited solely in my name from my father. Richard had no claim to it whatsoever. Armed with this information, I felt the surge of power for the first time since Richard's betrayal. I was going to turn the tables on him, and he wouldn't see it coming. Miss Johnson drafted the divorce papers with precision, ensuring my rights were protected. But it wasn't just about the legal battle, it was personal. Richard had hurt me deeply, and I was going to make him pay. I couldn't wait to see the look on his face when he realized the house he planned to give to his mistress was not his to give. The thought brought a small, satisfied smile to my lips. But this was only the beginning. I was determined to hit Richard where it hurt the most. His ego, his pride, his sense of self. Nothing was off limits. He had started this war, but I was going to finish it. As I signed the divorce papers, I felt a mix of sadness and determination. The life I had known was over, but a new chapter was beginning. In this chapter, I was the author, and Richard was just a cautionary tale in the story of my life. The day I filed the divorce papers marked a turning point. My heart raced with a mix of fear and excitement as I handed over the documents. This was it, the point of no return. But as I left the courthouse, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was no longer the victim in Richard's cruel game. I was now the protagonist in my own story of justice. Later, I met with Miss Johnson to plan our next move. We sat in her office, the afternoon sun casting long shadows on the floor as we plotted Richard's downfall. "Richard's going to fight dirty, Evelyn. You need to be prepared for that," Miss Johnson warned, her eyes serious. "I know," I replied, steeling myself. "But I have something he doesn't know about. The land this house is on. It's mine, inherited from my father." Miss Johnson's eyes lit up. "That changes everything. He can't claim the house without the land. We can serve him an eviction notice." The idea of Richard and Clara receiving an eviction notice from the home they thought was theirs brought a bitter sense of satisfaction. It was more than just a legal move. It was a statement. I was not going to be discarded and forgotten. "Let's do it," I said firmly. The day the eviction notice was delivered, I imagined the shock and anger on Richard's face. This was just the beginning of his karma. For every tear I shed, for every sleepless night, he would pay. But the battle was far from over. Fueled by his ego, Richard wouldn't go down without a fight. He called me, his voice a mix of disbelief and fury. "Evelyn, what the hell do you think you're doing with this eviction notice?" he barked. "I'm just reclaiming what's mine, Richard. You should have thought twice before deciding to give away something that wasn't yours," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "This is ridiculous. You're doing this to get back at me, aren't you?" he accused. "It's not about revenge, Richard. It's about justice. You can't just take what you want without consequences," I countered. Richard was silent for a moment, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in his head. He had underestimated me, thinking I would quietly retreat. But I was fighting back, and I wasn't going to stop until I got what was rightfully mine. "This isn't over, Evelyn. I'll fight this," he finally said. "Go ahead," I responded. "But remember, the law is on my side, and I'm not backing down." After hanging up, I felt a surge of power. For too long, I had let Richard dictate our lives. But now the tables were turned. I was in control, and I would not relent until justice was served. In the weeks that followed, it was a chess game of legal maneuvers and emotional confrontations. Richard, caught off guard by the eviction notice, launched into a series of desperate attempts to sway the situation in his favor. But with each move, he only tangled himself further in his own web. One evening, as I sat in my living room, the phone rang. The caller ID flashed Richard's name, and I braced myself for another round of pleading and anger. "Evelyn, you can't do this to me, to us." Richard's voice came through, tinged with frustration. "Us? There's no us anymore, Richard. You made sure of that," I replied, my voice steady. "This is madness. You're going to leave me homeless over some petty revenge," he argued. "Petty? You call destroying our family petty?" I shot back. "This isn't about revenge, Richard. It's about consequences. Your actions have them, and now you're facing them." Richard's voice turned softer, almost pleading. "Evelyn, please, let's talk about this. We can sort it out for old time's sake. I almost laughed. Old time's sake? As if our years together were mere tokens to be traded in times of trouble. There's nothing left to sort out, Richard. You made your choices, now you live with them. He was silent for a moment, and I could sense his desperation mounting. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Seeing me suffer, he accused. It's not about enjoyment, Richard. It's about justice. You need to understand that every action has a consequence. And this, I paused. This is yours. I hung up before he could respond. My heart was racing, but there was a sense of empowerment in standing my ground. For too long, I had let Richard dictate the terms of our life. But now the balance had shifted. I was no longer the passive wife he thought he could easily discard. In the following days, the reality of his situation seemed to dawn on Richard. His calls became less frequent, his voice less assured. The man who had once held all the power in our relationship was now scrambling to salvage what he could. What little he could salvage from the ruins he had created, Richard scrambled to grasp. Clara's presence in the background of this drama was a constant reminder of the catalyst for all of this. But I knew her part in Richard's story was coming to an end. She was just another pawn in his game, and soon she would realize it too. I lay awake at night, the silence of the house contrasting sharply with the chaos of my thoughts. But amidst the turmoil, there was a growing sense of clarity. I was doing the right thing, not just for me, but for our child. In this battle of wills, I was not just fighting for my rights, I was fighting for our future. As the legal battle intensified, Richard's veneer of control began to crack. The house he had intended to gift Clara was slipping through his fingers, and with it, his imagined future. His desperation became more evident with each passing day. One afternoon, as I reviewed some documents from Miss Johnson, my phone buzzed with a message from Richard. It was an invitation, or rather a plea, for a meeting. Against my better judgment, I agreed. It was time to face him, not as his wife, but as the architect of his downfall. We met at a quiet cafe, on neutral ground amidst our war. Richard looked haggard, the strain of the situation etching deep lines on his face. As he saw me, his expression shifted from relief to something darker. Evelyn, thank you for coming. We need to sort this out, he started, his voice shaky. Sort this out? You mean find a way for you to weasel out of the consequences? I replied coldly. He leaned forward, his eyes searching mine. I know I've made mistakes, but this is too much. You're taking everything from me, everything. No, Richard, I'm taking back what's mine. You made your choice when you decided to betray our family. Now I'm making mine, I said firmly. Richard's frustration boiled over. You're heartless. Do you enjoy seeing me like this, struggling, begging? I met his gaze unflinching. Heartless? You dare call me heartless after what you've done? This isn't about enjoyment, Richard. It's about justice. You can beg all you want, but it changes nothing. He slumped back in his chair, defeated. So what? You're going to leave me homeless, ruin me. If that's what it takes for you to understand the gravity of your actions, then yes, I said. You thought you could discard me without any repercussions. You were wrong. Richard looked away, the reality of his situation finally dawning on him. What about Clara? He asked, almost as an afterthought. Clara? She's your concern, not mine. Though I doubt she'll stick around once she realizes there's nothing left for her. Here, I replied as I stood up to leave. Richard reached out in a last-ditch effort to salvage something from the wreckage. Evelyn, please, he pleaded. I pulled away. Save your pleas, Richard. It's too late for that. You've made your bed, now you lie in it. Walking away from that cafe, I felt a surge of liberation. The chains of our marriage, once so constrictive, were now broken. I was free from Richard's betrayal, free to rebuild my life on my terms. In the wake of our meeting, Richard's attempts to sway the situation became increasingly frantic and futile. His calls, once demanding and arrogant, were now laced with desperation. The tables had turned, and he was slowly coming to terms with the magnitude of his mistakes. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, my phone rang. The familiar jingle brought an involuntary sigh. It was Richard again. Bracing myself, I answered. Evelyn, you can't do this. We can talk about this. There has to be another way. Richard pleaded, his voice cracking. Another way? After everything you've done, you think there's a way out for you? I responded, my voice laced with incredulity. It's not just about me. Think about our child, Evelyn. This affects them too, he argued, playing what he thought was his trump card. Our child. The same child you so easily dismissed in your plans with Clara. No, Richard. This is about justice. This is about making sure our child knows that actions have consequences, I retorted. There was a pause on the other end, a silence filled with unspoken realizations. Richard had always underestimated me, but no longer. I was no longer the woman he thought he could control and manipulate. You're going to regret this, Evelyn. You're pushing me too far, Richard said, his voice a mixture of anger and fear. Regret? The only regret I have is not seeing your true colors sooner. You're not being pushed too far, you're just finally being held accountable, I shot back. Richard's frustration boiled over. You think you've won, don't you? You think you can just take everything and leave me with nothing. This isn't about winning or losing, Richard. It's about righting a wrong. You made your choices, and now you live with the consequences. It's that simple, I replied firmly. The call ended with Richard's defeated silence, a stark contrast to his usual bluster. He was finally feeling the weight of his actions, the cost of his betrayal. In the following weeks, the reality of Richard's situation became increasingly apparent. His financial resources dwindled, strained by legal fees and the loss of the house. Clara, ever the opportunist, began to distance herself, her affection waning as Richard's fortunes declined. The final court hearing was a formality, a legal stamp on what was already a foregone conclusion. As I stood outside the courthouse, the decree in hand, I felt an overwhelming sense of closure. Richard's downfall was complete, a direct result of his own actions. He had sown the seeds of his destruction, and I had merely ensured they grew. I turned my back on the courthouse, my heart lighter than it had been in months. The future lay ahead, undefined, but promising. I have fought for justice for myself and my child and emerged victorious. The months following the divorce and Richard's eviction from the house brought profound changes. Our home, once tainted by the shadow of betrayal, slowly transformed back into a sanctuary of peace and strength for me and our child. Each room was cleansed of Richard's presence, his memories replaced by new joyful ones. Richard's downfall continued in a downward spiral. Without the house and struggling financially, he was forced to move back in with his parents. The last I heard, Clara had left him, her affections as transient as the wealth she had hoped to secure. As I tended to the garden, a task that had become a source of solace, my phone rang. The screen flashed Richard's name, a reminder of a chapter I had firmly closed. Curiosity piqued, I answered. Evelyn, it's Richard. His voice came through subdued and almost unrecognizable. What do you want, Richard? I asked, my tone indifferent. I wanted to apologize for everything, he said, the words seemingly difficult for him to utter. Apologies don't change the past, Richard. They don't undo the hurt, I replied calmly. I know, he admitted. I've lost everything, Evelyn. Clara's gone. I'm living with my parents. I've hit rock bottom. That was your doing, Richard. You made those choices, I stated plainly. There was a heavy sigh on the other end. I know. I thought you should know. I regret it, Evelyn. I regret it all. His words laden with remorse. But his words didn't bring me the satisfaction I had once thought they would. Instead, there was a sense of finality, a closing of a chapter that had caused so much pain. Your regret is your own to live with, Richard. I've moved on. I suggest you do the same, I said, ready to end the conversation. Evelyn, he started, but trailed off. There's nothing more to say, Richard. Goodbye, I said, and hung up. As I put my phone away and turned back to my garden, a sense of peace washed over me. The past was behind me, and ahead was a life filled with possibilities, a life of my own making. The garden bloomed around me, a testament to new beginnings and growth. Our child laughed in the background, a sound that filled my heart with joy. This was my world now, one where betrayal and pain had no place. Richard's chapter in my life was over, but mine was just beginning. A chapter filled with strength, resilience, and the love of those who truly mattered. I was born into a world where my family name gives me lots of advantages. My dad is a big shot in a company you've probably heard about. But don't think my life is all fancy and glamorous. I'm not the kind of person who spends all day shopping for expensive clothes and drinking champagne. I've always stayed true to myself, even though my family has a lot of money. I've chosen a different path in life. I do things like helping out people who need it and living a normal, down-to-earth life. That's just who I am, Jessica, without any fancy titles. One night, my friend Sarah convinced me to go out with her. We ended up in a dive bar downtown. Sarah was all excited, trying to set me up with some guy she met online. But then, another guy named Alex showed up. He wasn't the guy Sarah had in mind, but there was something about him that caught my attention. He seemed relaxed and friendly, not trying to impress anyone with fancy clothes or big talk. We started chatting, and it felt natural, like we'd known each other for ages. Alex mentioned he worked as a manager somewhere, nothing too flashy. But he talked about his job with such excitement that it made me interested. "You really love your job, huh?" I asked, taking a sip of my beer. "Absolutely," Alex replied, leaning in. "Every day is a challenge, but hey, I'm not here to bore you with work talk." "What about you?" Sarah mentioned charity work. I shrugged, trying to play it down. "Yeah, a bit of this and that, just trying to do my part, you know." "That's cool, really cool," he said sincerely, not trying to impress me, but genuinely interested. As the night went on, Alex and I stuck together, chatting about anything and everything. It was nice talking to someone who wasn't trying to sell me something or brag about their possessions. As the night wound down, Alex seemed like he was building up to something. "Hey Jessica, I know this is kind of forward, but would you want to grab dinner with me sometime, just us?" he asked. I felt a mix of surprise and excitement. "Sure," I said, trying to sound casual. "I'd like that." On the way home, Sarah was all giggles, saying, "I told you so." I just smiled, thinking about the evening. Alex was a breath of fresh air in my often stale world. Soon, going out turned into hanging out at each other's places, mostly mine because Alex's roommates were a handful. One evening, while lounging on the couch after eating some average takeout pizza, Alex turned to me with a serious look but a light tone. "Jessica, how do you feel about making this a more permanent arrangement?" he asked, crumbs still on his mouth. I raised an eyebrow. "Are you proposing we split a Netflix account or something?" He chuckled, brushing off the crumbs. "Well, I was thinking more like a life together. But hey, we can start with Netflix. The simplicity of it, the straightforwardness, no grand gestures or dramatic moments, just us being ourselves, felt right. Alex, if you're asking what I think you're asking, yes, 1,000 times yes." And just like that, with the smell of cheap pizza in the air as our witness, we decided to get married. It happened quickly, but we were sure. But when you know, you know. Telling our families was the next hurdle. My parents, well, they've always been about the "as long as you're happy" mantra, but this was putting it to the test. Dad with his business empire and Mom the socialite, they had visions of me settling down with someone more in our circle. I broke the news over dinner, the fancy kind where you're not sure which fork to use for the salad. "Mom, Dad, I'm getting married to Alex," I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. Dad paused, fork midair. "Alex," the manager chap. "Well, that's quick," he said. Mom simply smiled, a bit too tightly. "Dear, are you sure? This is rather sudden, isn't it?" But I was firm. "Yes, I'm sure. He's amazing, and we're really happy together." Their skepticism was palpable, but so was their love. "Well, if he makes you happy, darling," Mom conceded, and Dad nodded in agreement. Alex's folks were a whole different story. We went over to their place, a cozy little house that always seemed to smell like fresh cookies or something equally comforting. Judy and Martin were as down to earth as they come, and they welcomed me like I'd always been a part of the family. Alex tells us you're setting a date, Martin asked, passing me a plate of those infamous cookies. Yes, we're thinking sooner rather than later. Small ceremony, nothing fancy, I replied, trying to gauge their reaction. Judy beamed. Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. We're just thrilled for you both. Their warmth was enveloping, a stark contrast to the cautious optimism of my own parents. It was clear right from the get-go that our worlds were different, but the common ground was the genuine happiness for me and Alex. Planning the wedding, we were on the same page. Keep it simple. Keep it us. A small ceremony, close friends and family, and an open bar because, as Alex put it, if we're doing this, we're making sure everyone's having a good time. And that's how it went down. A swift engagement, not because we were rushing. Living with Alex started off just as I'd hoped for and more. We were like two peas in a pod, making our little corner of the world in that cozy modern apartment I had rented. It was ours, filled with love, laughter, and a ton of takeout containers because neither of us were winning any awards in the kitchen. It wasn't long before I started noticing how Alex's parents, Judy and Martin, had this way of dropping hints about things they liked or needed whenever they came over. At first, it was subtle, almost cute. Oh, Jessica, that's a lovely coffee maker. It must make mornings a breeze, Judy would say, eyeing our shiny new appliance with a gleam in her eye. Or, Martin, this sofa is just divine. Our old one's been giving me a right pain in the back, you know, Martin would comment. Wanting to be the good daughter-in-law, I'd surprise them with gifts here and there. A coffee maker for Judy, a comfortable new sofa for their living room, and so on. Their initial reactions were always the same, a mix of surprise and a little bit of guilt. Oh, Jessica, you shouldn't have. This is too much, Judy would exclaim, her hands fluttering to her chest. But you know, humans are funny creatures. Give them an inch and they'll take a mile. Those initial protests faded away, replaced by a growing list of subtle hints that were about as subtle as a brick through a window. Dinner at your folks' place was lovely, dear. Did you see that new TV they have? Crystal clear. Ours is practically ancient. Alex would relay his parents' latest comments, oblivious to the change in their tone. One evening, after I had just dropped a not-so-small fortune on a fancy new TV for them, Alex and I were curled up on the couch, my head resting in his lap. They really love the TV, babe. You're amazing. You know that, he said, his fingers running through my hair. I sighed, the weight of their expectations starting to press down on me. Alex, do they expect us to keep doing this? It's getting a bit much, don't you think? He paused, his hand stopping mid-stroke. What do you mean? They're just happy, that's all. Happy or taking advantage? I pushed back, sitting up to look at him. It feels like we're their personal shopping service. Alex was taken aback, his brow furrowing. They're not like that, Jess. They're just not used to nice things, that's all. But where does it end, Alex? It's like they've got a taste for it now. And they're not looking back, I argued, frustration creeping into my voice. The conversation ended with an uneasy truce, but it was clear we were on different pages. Judy and Martin's gratitude had morphed into entitlement, and it was putting a strain on me. I loved Alex, but I wasn't about to become a bottomless ATM for his parents. When my dad's company hit the skids, it felt like the rug was yanked out from under my feet. That cushy life, poof, gone. And with it, the whole dynamic of my relationship took a nosedive. The shift wasn't gradual. It was like flipping a switch from daylight to darkness. I had to break the news to Alex and his folks. Let me tell you, that was a conversation I've been dreading. Listen up, things are going to get tight. Dad's company's tanking, and, well, we're in for a rough ride, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But the tremor was there, betraying my nerves. Alex's reaction was a gut punch. You're kidding me, right? What do you mean things are going to get tight? You're telling me we can't live like we used to because of your dad's mess. His words were like ice, and for a second, I wished the floor would swallow me whole. Judy and Martin's faces were no better, their disappointment barely masked. This is quite the situation you put us in, Jessica, Martin added, his tone dripping with reproach. And just like that, the warmth and camaraderie we once shared evaporated, replaced by this cold expectation that somehow I was to blame for my family's financial downturn. Moving in with them was held up as a temporary solution. Our once independent life got swapped for a guest room that felt more like a cell in the house of two people who clearly saw us as a nuisance. The atmosphere was charged with tension, every day a reminder that I'd somehow failed them. We're cutting back on everything because of this, Judy would remind me, her voice sharp as she served dinner that was a far cry from the lavish meals we used to enjoy. And Martin, always with a comment on saving costs. Make sure those lights are off. We're not running a charity here. But Alex, he was the hardest to bear. The man I married seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone who saw me as a letdown. Can't you do something? Talk to your dad. It's like you don't even care we're living like this. He'd snap, anger flaring over the smallest things. Our conversations, once easy and filled with future plans, now were minefields. Every word I said was a potential trigger for another outburst. I thought marrying you meant security, not this struggle. He'd throw at me during arguments, his words slicing through me. It was clear we weren't just dealing with financial stress. This was a test of our relationship, a revelation of true colors under pressure. I was stuck in the middle, battling the disillusionment from my husband and his parents while grappling with my own sense of failure. Judy's birthday dinner was supposed to be this cozy family thing at some upscale restaurant, a break from the constant tension, but it turned into the showdown of a lifetime. I should have seen it coming, the way things had been going at their place. We're all sitting there, menu in hand, and I'm trying to keep the peace, just blend into the background. But that plan got torpedoed the second orders started flying. Alex, with this grin that made my skin crawl, goes, "Let's get the steak and the lobster for us." And he throws a look my way, 1 part smug, 2 parts cruel. Jessica can do with the soup of the day, that to save where we can, right? They all laugh like it's the best joke they've heard in ages. Judy adds her 2 cents, absolutely. Can't have Jessica overspending now, can we? I felt this flush of heat, not embarrassment, but pure fury. Really? Soup? What's this? Some kind of sick joke? I snapped back, my voice sharper than I intended. Oh, come on, Jessica. It's just a bit of fun, Alex said, that smirk still plastered on his face. Fun? This is your idea of fun? When the chips are down, you just show how petty you really are. I can't believe I fell for your act, I exclaimed. You could hear a pin drop. The whole restaurant was watching now, the awkwardness off the charts. I didn't sit back down. Keep your fancy dishes and your pathetic jokes. I'm out, I said, standing up so fast my chair nearly toppled over, the noise echoing and turning more heads our way. Alex reached out, trying to play the peacemaker. Jessica, don't. Let's not make this a scene. A scene? You think I care about making a scene? After that stunt. This is about respect, something you clearly have none of, I said, yanking my arm free and making for the exit. The weight of their stares on my back, stepping out into the night, felt like breaking out of prison. My phone was blowing up. Alex no doubt trying to do damage control. I ignored it, my mind made up. I drove back to their place, a storm of emotions brewing inside. How had things gone so sour? Alex and I were a team, or so I thought. But that dinner, it was a slap in the face, a wake-up call I couldn't ignore. Back at the house, I packed my bags in record time, each folded shirt, a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. It wasn't just about leaving a place, it was about leaving a relationship that had shown its true colors. I turned off my phone, cutting off the barrage of messages. The silence was eerie but welcome. That night wasn't just the end of a disastrous dinner. It was the close of a chapter I had no interest in revisiting. After the disaster that was Judy's birthday dinner, I found myself driving to my parents' house. The night was quiet, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. By the time I pulled up to their driveway, my decision was made. I needed sanctuary, yes, but more than that, I needed advice, something only my dad could offer. Walking into the house, the familiarity of it all was both comforting and jarring. Mom was asleep, but Dad was up, sitting in his study surrounded by papers that seemed less important the moment I stepped in. "Jessica, what are you doing here at this hour? Is everything okay?" He stood up, concern etching his face. I took a deep breath, the events of the evening pouring out of me in a flood. I told him about the dinner, about Alex and his parents, and how I felt like I'd been reduced to nothing but a source of income for them. Dad listened in silence, his expression hardening with every word. When I finished, he sighed, a sound that carried years of experience and a hint of sorrow. "Jessica, I saw this coming. I just hoped I was wrong," he finally said, his voice steady but filled with empathy. "How could I have been so blind, Dad?" "I thought, Alex, I thought we were different," I said, feeling the weight of my naivety. He walked over, putting an arm around my shoulders. "You wanted to see the best in him, in them. There's no fault in that. But people show their true colors in tough times. It's a hard lesson, but an important one." I nodded, the reality of his words sinking in. "But what do I do now? I can't go back there. You'll stay here for starters. As for the rest, we'll figure it out together," he assured me, his confidence a balm to my frayed nerves. Then he shared something that took me by surprise. "You know, the company situation isn't as dire as it seems. We're actually on the verge of a breakthrough. It was a strategic move, a way to weed out the opportunists." I stared at him, stunned. "So, you mean to say we're not broke?" He chuckled, a sound that was part relief, part amusement. Far from it. But it was important to see who would stick around when the chips were down. Unfortunately, Alex and his family showed their true selves. The revelation was a lot to process. My anger towards Alex and his parents was now mixed with a sense of vindication. They had revealed their true motives, and in doing so, had freed me from a future of manipulation and deceit. "Dad, I don't know whether to be relieved or furious," I admitted, the emotions battling inside me. "Be both. It's okay. But remember, this experience has taught you something invaluable about people and their intentions. Use it. Learn from it," he advised, grounding me. Walking up to Judy and Martin's house the next day felt like heading into the lion's den. I was ready for a showdown, but nothing could have prepared me for the cold reception I got. Alex was standing there, divorce papers in hand, with a look that could only be described as triumphant disdain. "Here you go. Let's get this over with," he said, practically shoving the papers at me. His parents were hovering behind, barely containing their glee. Finally getting rid of the freeloader, Judy snickered, and Martin nodded in agreement, a smug smile plastered across his face. Alex joined in. "Yes, turns out you're just an ordinary dummy without your daddy's money. Thought you'd cry. But guess what? We don't need a tearful mess around here." Their words stung, but not in the way they expected. I felt a bizarre mix of anger and liberation. I looked at the papers, then at them, and without a word, signed where I needed to. As I did, their smiles widened, thinking they'd won. But I had the last laugh. Pulling out a newspaper from my bag, I slapped it down on the table with more force than necessary. "Thought you might find this interesting," I said, my voice dripping with unrestrained satisfaction. The headline screamed about my dad's company making a monumental comeback, profits soaring higher than ever. Watching their faces drain of color was a sight I'd pay to see again. Judy and Martin's smugness vanished, replaced by shock, then desperation. Alex's arrogance crumbled, leaving him looking like a child who just lost his favorite toy. Judy suddenly switched gears, stepping towards me with arms wide open. "Oh, my sweet girl. It's all a big misunderstanding. Let's hug it out." Martin, ever the opportunist, chimed in. "Let's not rush things. Sit down, have a coffee, and we can talk this through. And Alex? Oh, Alex, he was the picture of regret. I was wrong, okay? We can fix this. I want to make everything right, please. Their sudden change of heart was almost comical. Almost. I couldn't help but laugh, a deep, hearty sound that felt cleansing. You three are something else, you know that? But here's a news flash for you. I'm done with the lies, the manipulation, and the so-called family that only values me for my bank account. I turned to leave, their protests and pleas fading into the background. They called after me, a mix of desperation and disbelief in their voices. But I didn't look back, not this time. After the spectacle at Judy and Martin's house, I was done. Not just with them, but with the whole sorry saga that had become my life. I needed a fresh start, a clean slate. So, I took some time holed up at my folks' place, getting my head and heart back in the game. One afternoon, a couple of weeks after the divorce was finalized, I was out for coffee with Sarah, my ever-supportive friend who had been there through it all. "Girl, you look like a weight's been lifted," she commented, sipping her latte. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "You have no idea. It's like I can finally breathe again." Sarah leaned in, her expression turning serious. "So, what's next for you, Jess? You've got a clean slate now." I thought about it, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. "I'm not sure, but I'm excited to find out. Maybe I'll travel, pick up some of the charity work I had to put on hold. As for love," I paused, giving her a rueful smile. "I think I'll give that a miss for a while. Just make sure you're doing what makes you happy, okay? You deserve it after all that drama," she said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Thanks, Sarah. That's the plan," I replied. Not long after that conversation, my phone started buzzing with calls and messages from Alex. He was pleading, saying he'd changed, that we could start over. His parents even got in on the act, sending messages filled with apologies and invitations to talk things over. Sitting in my room, phone in hand, I couldn't help but laugh. The sheer audacity was almost admirable. Almost. I typed out a response, one I'd been mulling over for days. "Alex, moving on means moving forward, not going back to what broke you. I wish you all the best, but this is where our path ends for good. Take care." Hitting send felt like closing the final chapter of a book I'd been stuck in for too long. And just like that, I was ready to start writing a new one. The next few months were a blur of activity. I threw myself into my work, took up volunteering with a vengeance, and even booked a solo trip to a place I'd always wanted to visit. Life was full, and for the first time in a long while, it was fulfilling too. One evening, sitting on a balcony overlooking a bustling street in a far-off city, I realized I'd found what I'd been searching for all along: peace. The drama, the heartache, the betrayal. It all seemed like a distant memory. My phone buzzed with a new message, but this time it was from a number I didn't recognize. Hesitantly, I opened it. It was from someone I'd met during my travels, someone who'd made me laugh and think in equal measure. "Hey Jessica, how about dinner when you're back? No expectations, just food and good company." I stared at the message, a smile slowly spreading across my face. Maybe it was time to open my heart again, but on my terms and my pace. "Yes, I'd like that," I typed back, hitting send before I could second-guess myself. Looking out at the city lights, I felt a sense of excitement for the future. I had moved on, not just from Alex and his family, but from the person I was when I was with them. I was stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next.